We'd like to welcome this morning a special guest who has come to us from Linwood, not too far away, Dr. John Brunt. Some of you might know from his Walla Walla days as a professor of New Testament there, but then he served as a pastor at the Edmonds Church for a number of years before retiring, and we're very glad that he accepted our invitation to be with us here today, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, happy Sabbath. It is very good to be here with you. I imagine that perhaps around Christmas time, some of you have either gone to a performance or watched on television a performance of Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker. And if you have, do any of you remember the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy? Oh, I see heads nodding. How many remember that piece from the Nutcracker? How many of you like that piece? Oh, just about as many hands. Well, I have a confession to make this morning. I don't. In fact, every time I hear it, it kind of grates on me. Now, it has nothing to do with the music itself. It has to do with associations that go back a long, long ways, all the way to the first grade. You see, when I was in Miss Wentworth's class at what was then called Glendale Union Academy in Southern California, there was a rhythm to our day. Every day we went out for lunch at noon. I always liked that part. Usually we ate outside because it was nice Southern California weather. Then we had recess, and that was great. We had a wonderful playground with a great big slide with 3 bumps. And then when recess was over at about 1 o'clock, every day we went back into our room, and the same thing happened. Miss Wentworth would get out an old, scratchy 78 record, and some of you don't even know what that means. And she would put it on the turntable, and it must have been the only record that she had in the room because it was the same record every day. And sometimes she played it 2 or 3 times. It was the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. And when she started playing that music, we had what was called rest period. And we were supposed to put our heads down on the desk, and we were not to wiggle, not to whisper, not to move, not to show any signs of life except maybe breathing, but then only gently. And we were to do absolutely nothing. Do you know how hard that is for a first grade boy? I mean, you know, there are wiggles that are just there, and there are some things you have to whisper, and sometimes things are funny and you have to laugh. I got into more trouble during rest period than any other time of the day. For me, in the first grade, rest was a 4-letter word. And every time I hear Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, I remember that old scratchy record and rest period. Now, I have to say that there have been a lot of times since then when I have way more stuff to do than I can get done in one day, when the idea of just putting my head down on the desk and doing nothing would have felt really good. The biblical concept of rest is neither of these things. It is not doing nothing. It is not crashing under the burden of all the stuff we have to do. Rather, the biblical concept of rest is setting aside one day as very special to remind us how we ought to live every day. A life of restfulness and peace in Christ. a Hebrew Bible scholar named Walter Brueggemann, has coined a term for this. He says that when we keep Sabbath, we need to learn to seven our lives. To seven our lives, to live a sevened life. That Sabbath is not just a duty, but it is a teacher that teaches us how to seven our lives. What might it mean to live a sevened life? This morning I want us to go back to the very familiar fourth commandment, and I want to see three elements that I think are part of what it would mean to live a sevened life as we are taught by our Sabbath keeping. So I'm going to read this very familiar passage. I'm going to read it from the NIV, so it's probably a little different from what you memorized growing up. The fourth commandment, Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigners residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the seas, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So how might keeping this day holy lead us to a sevened life? Three elements. Number one, Sabbath teaches us who we are. It gives us our identity and value and worth. It goes all the way back to creation. And you remember that at creation, when God created the world, afterwards, he said, "It is good." But then you remember what he said after he created human beings. "It is very good." And after God created human beings, he came to be with them, to stop his work and enjoy time with them, to let them know that they were his children, created for fellowship with him. You see, your value comes not simply from what you produce or what you do. All those things are important, but that's not your worth. That's not your identity. You are more than what you achieve and what you accomplish and what you acquire. You are valuable because you are God's child. Brueggemann puts it this way. He says, on Sabbath, you don't have to do more, you don't have to sell more, you don't have to know more, you don't have to control more, you don't have to have your kids in ballet or soccer, you don't have to be younger or more beautiful, you don't have to score more. You just have to be with God because you're his child and you are valuable. Your worth is your being a child of God. I was at a time management seminar one time. I learned some things from it, but I must admit I found it disturbing. You see, the leader of this time management seminar had a mantra that he kept coming back to. He said, time is a commodity that can be translated into money. And therefore, you need to use your time wisely. Use every second well. And he talked about things that might waste our time. One of the things he said that the big time waster is people come and they just want to chat. And you're not making money when you're chatting. So he gave us these tips for how we get rid of people when they want to talk to us so that we can get back to what is important. And he even had a formula for this. It was TI plus TA equals $, which was time plus talent equals money. And as I listened to him, I couldn't help but think about what the late Jewish philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel says in his book on Sabbath. He says, we usually think the earth is our mother, time is money, and profit our mate. The seventh day reminds us that God is our Father, that time is life, and the Spirit our mate. Several years ago, I had the privilege of baptizing a wonderful gentleman from China. He's a dentist. He heads a dental clinic that is one of the most advanced technologically in all of China. He became acquainted with Loma Linda University because the hospital where his dental clinic is located had an affiliation with Loma Linda. He decided to come to Loma Linda to get some advanced training. And when he did, he fell in love with the community, with the people, with the lifestyle, the way of life. And I had the privilege of studying with him and baptizing him. Sometime later, he invited my wife and me to go over to China and spend some time with him and his wife. I'll never forget a Sabbath afternoon in a beautiful place overlooking West Lake in Hangzhou, China, as he talked about what it meant for him to make that transition and to become a follower of God and a Sabbath keeper. He said before he was absolutely driven. He said he lived a life of restlessness, hardly could sleep at night. He said he'd sleep for 1 or 2 hours, and then he had to be up working. And then he'd sleep maybe another hour or two, but he just couldn't sleep for very long because he was so driven. He wanted his clinic to be the very best in China. He said, now, I enjoy Sabbaths like these, and it makes a difference in the whole week. He said, I sleep well at night now, and my days are filled with peace. And you know what? My dental clinic is doing better than it ever did before. That's living a sevened life. A second element. Notice the commandment not only says that you get to rest, but it says everybody else gets to rest too. When we look at the table of stone that you see up here, we usually think of the fourth commandment as part of the first table, which is about relationship with God, and then the last 6, relationship with others. But actually, the fourth commandment is a transition. It's both. It involves our relationship with God, but it also reminds us about our relationship with others, because on Sabbath, it's not only you who rests. On Sabbath, the men rest and the women rest. On Sabbath, the masters rest and the servants rest. On Sabbath, the citizens rest and the aliens, the foreigners, the immigrants, they rest too. Everybody rests because everyone is a child of God. Sabbath reminds us that not only are we his children, we're all his children. You see, Sabbath is the great antidote to dehumanization. We live in a world where there's so much dehumanizing. You see, before we can really fight with others, we dehumanize them and make them less than what we are somehow. I read a book recently that was a difficult book to read, very well written, but difficult to read because of what it recounted. It's called King Leopold's Ghost, and it's about the colonization of the Congo in Africa. It talks about the way the indigenous people were treated. One story in particular, a military official who would actually use indigenous people randomly as target practice and shoot. And when called into question about it, he said, you have to realize that these people are not human in the same way that we are. Sabbath says everyone is God's child. Everyone. Sabbath reminds us everybody rests. You see, you can't be a true Sabbath keeper and be a white supremacist. You can't keep the Sabbath and be an anti-Semite. You can't keep Sabbath and hate LGBTQ people. You can't keep Sabbath and insult immigrants. You can't keep Sabbath and be a misogynist, because Sabbath brings us to an absolute command against dehumanization. Last month, I was on a wonderful vacation with my kids and grandkids in the Czech Republic and in Prague. We went to a synagogue in the Jewish quarter of Old Town Prague called the Pinkas Synagogue. A very moving and somber and solemn experience. When you go in the synagogue, there's something on the walls. At first you don't recognize what it is, but very small writing all around the walls. Every surface in the synagogue is covered with names, just the names of people. 77,297 names of people, Jews, from that area who lost their lives in the Holocaust. The most moving part of all is an area where you go in and you see pictures drawn by children in the concentration camps. And it is just heart-wrenching, dehumanizing. Sabbath means everyone is a child of God. As Abraham Joshua Heschel says, God is every person's pedigree. He is the father of everyone, or he is the father of no one. And no one has a place in his kingdom who tries to keep others in their place. Now I have a footnote here. This is just a footnote. We say everybody gets to rest on Sabbath, but we all know that there are some things that just have to be done on Sabbath, right? We're here with lights in this building, and I have a microphone so you can hear me. Somewhere, somebody's doing something to make that possible. Jesus healed on Sabbath. We continue having medical facilities where people have to be treated on Sabbath. Someone has to work. When I was first starting out in ministry, I was interning at a church that was on the campus of an Adventist hospital. And I spent a little time with the chaplains every day and was on call part of the time. And I remember one day there was a call that there was a woman who wanted to see a chaplain. I went to see her, and she just wanted to see a chaplain to express how grateful she was. She was so thankful. She was absolutely on cloud nine. She had just given birth. It had gone much easier than she thought it was going to go. The baby was a girl, which is what she had wanted. This was back in the days before we knew in advance what they were going to be. And then she said, and I am so, so glad it came today. It was Thursday. She said, it was actually not due for 2 more days. And for weeks, I've been worried that it was actually going to come on the due date because I heard that you don't deliver babies here on Saturdays. Well, I assured her that we would have delivered her baby whenever it came, whatever day it was. But what about when somebody has to work on Sabbath? It seems to me that then we think about Jesus and his healing ministry, and we make that necessary Sabbath work, necessary work, not just any work, but necessary work, an act of sacrifice, part of Jesus giving healing to others, a sacrifice that helps others be able to enjoy Sabbath. And then we make sure it doesn't happen to the same people all the time, because we all need our Sabbaths. Before my wife was a certified nurse midwife delivering babies in hospitals, she worked on the floor in an Adventist hospital. And in that hospital, they told them, since it's Sabbath, just do the minimum. And my wife could never do that. Instead, when she went into the room on Sabbath morning, she would say, you know, this is a very special day for me. It's my Sabbath. And I want it to be special for you too. What can I do extra today to make this a special day for you? That's the attitude. When we do have to work on Sabbath, it becomes that act of sacrifice to bless others, as Jesus did. End of footnote. Element number 3. You notice in this command, it's not only you who rest, it's not only all the other people who rest, but even the animals rest. And if you read on in the Pentateuch, you find that every 7 years, the land rests. You see, Sabbath reminds us that the earth is the Lord's, that God is the creator of all. It reminds us that we are to take care of the world that God has created. Now, I know there's a lot of emphasis today and a lot of talk about ecology and the environment and climate change. People are worried that we're going to burn down the only planet we've got to live on. And that's a valid concern that we all ought to care about. But that's a pragmatic concern. For Sabbath keepers, there's a deeper concern, and that's a principled concern. The concern that this is God's creation. Yes, marred by sin, but still God's creation. And we have the responsibility to take care of it, to care for the world that God has created around us. You see, Sabbath keepers are the ones who can really sing from the heart. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ear, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His hand the wonders wrought. And if his hand wrought it, we ought to take care of it, shouldn't we? And so a seventh life is a life lived in harmony with the world around us, a life lived in harmony with others, a life lived in harmony with God, because we know who we are. We are God's children, and he has called us into this fellowship. And so often it is Sabbath, isn't it, that gives us the opportunity for those special times with God, that gives us the opportunity to put aside other things and actually enjoy other people. I look back on my life, and some of the most meaningful conversations in my life have happened during times of Sabbath rest. That's what it is to live a seventh life. But I'm afraid that in our helter-skelter world, where we are so busy, a lot of us too often live a different kind of life. I call it a cookie clicker life. Cookie Clicker is a game on the internet. It's still there, I noticed. I think it's become perhaps different and more complicated than when I first knew about it. But when my grandson, who's now a high school sophomore, was in early elementary school, he found this game on the internet called Cookie Clicker. Very, very simple. You log in, and there's a picture of a chocolate chip cookie. And you click on it, and you get another cookie. And you click again, and you get another cookie. And if you click long enough and fast enough, then every time you click, instead of getting a cookie, you get 10 cookies. And if you click more, faster and faster, every time you click, instead of getting 10 cookies, you get 100 cookies. Now, mind you, these are virtual cookies. They do not put off that wonderful aroma of chocolate chip cookies in the oven. You can't touch them. You can't taste them. They're just virtual cookies on a screen. But if you keep clicking, you get more of them. And Conlon was so excited every day he would come out and tell us how many more cookies he had. And at night you could stop it and then start clicking again in the morning. And I remember finally he came in one day and he said, "Grandpa, I'm up to 43 trillion cookies a second." A few days later, I asked him how many cookies he had. And he said, "Oh, I stopped it." "Oh, why?" You know what he said? "It got boring." It got boring. You see, a cookie clicker life always does. Because just getting more and more, whether it's more virtual cookies on a screen, or more stocks in the portfolio, or more promotions up the corporate ladder, more stuff, more status, it eventually gets boring. Because we are made for more than just getting more. We're made for living a seventh life. A life knowing who we are, children of God. A life caring for the wonderful creation that God has made for us. A life in fellowship with others instead of competition with others. The life that God intended us to live. A seventh life. And that is really living. Let's pray. Lord, we are so grateful for Sabbath. And as we leave today, may we go with the love of God, the fellowship of the Spirit, the grace and mercy and peace and restfulness of Jesus Christ. We pray in his name, amen.